Hey there, Twisters, and welcome, hockey fans. My name is Nick, and today I'll be previewing the 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs. They are finally here, and I hope that you're looking forward to it just as much as I am. This video is your everything you need to know guide for anybody less familiar with the NHL. I will be explaining how the playoff format works, and then I'll be diving into each playoff team. We'll be assessing how they performed in the regular season, who the key players are, and of course, looking at that first round matchup for each team. Of course, I want to know your thoughts in the comments down below. Who do you want to win the Stanley Cup, and who do you think will actually hoist the Stanley Cup? So comment down below. And if you're new here, you like hockey in any capacity, hit that red subscribe button down below. Join our growing hockey community. Especially, this is the greatest time to do it because I'll be live streaming every day. There's a playoff game. So join the Twist Brigade here. Let's have a great time reacting to all of the postseason madness. Now, for any newer fans, I will explain how the playoffs work, so if you are a seasoned NHL fan, you can skip ahead to my team-by-team previews. So for the first time in 3 years, we are actually returning to the regular playoff format here. 16 out of 32 teams qualify for the playoffs, 8 from each conference. I'll show you the bracket a little bit later so that you can see how the matchups are determined. With 16 teams, there are 4 rounds to the playoffs, with the 4th round being the Stanley Cup Final. Each round of the playoffs is a best-of-7 series, so a team has to win 4 out of 7 games in order to advance. They can win those games in any way, shape, or form. During a series, the teams will play each other every other day or every 3 days. Usually that's a travel day to go from one city to another. If a team loses a series, then they are eliminated from the playoffs outright. There is no consolation round or anything like that. The same rules from the regular season carry over into the playoffs with one big exception, and that is overtime. So in the regular season, it is a 3-on-3 competition that lasts for as long as 5 minutes, and then if there is no winner, it goes to a shootout. Overtime is exactly the same as regulation in the postseason, so it's 5-on-5, 20-minute periods. Whoever scores first wins the game, and sometimes you'll see games that go into 3, 4, 5, even 6 overtimes. That's happened twice in Stanley Cup playoffs history. Now let's take a look at the playoff bracket. So this is divided into Western and Eastern conferences. Within each conference, we have each division, so the Metropolitan and Atlantic divisions inside the Eastern Conference, and the Pacific and Central divisions within the Western Conference. Matchups are determined essentially like this. Teams with a better regular season record will be matched up against teams with a worse regular season record. And then lastly, there is no reseeding like in other leagues. It works just like March Madness. It's straight up linear. You play a predetermined opponent, and once you lose, you're out of the tournament. Now I'll get into the team-by-team spotlights, but first, do please keep in mind that this is through like 80 or 81 games instead of the 82 full games of the regular season. That was just because this is a huge time suck. So anyway, I hope that you'll find this information relevant. And without further ado, let's dive into it. Let's start with the Eastern Conference, and I'll begin in the Metropolitan Division side of the bracket. So the first team here is the Carolina Hurricanes. Overall on the season, 54-20-8 with a 47-20 regulation record. I bring this up because, as mentioned earlier, overtime in the regular season is a 3-on-3 competition, so that really isn't a factor in the playoffs. Their opponent is the Boston Bruins. The Hurricanes were 3-0-0 against Boston. They outscored them 16-1, but they haven't played each other since February 10th. Let's look at some key statistics here out of the 32 teams in the regular season. So Carolina, 9th in goals for, best when it comes to goals against average, tied for 12th on the power play, best penalty kill, 88%, that's wicked good, and their win percentage in 1-goal games is 12th. So I wanted to bring that up because the playoffs really see a lot of tight contests. A lot of those go into overtime, 5-on-5, so that is a somewhat pertinent statistic. The key players, here are 3 guys to look out for. First of all, center Sebastian Aho, 78 games played, 37 goals, 43 assists for 80 points. He is the straw that stirs the drink offensively for Carolina, but they do get contributions up and down their lineup. Defenseman Jacob Slavin is a fantastic defenseman at both ends of the ice, 79 games played, 32 points, 74 takeaways to just 43 giveaways. No defenseman in the NHL handles the puck like Jacob Slavin does and forces turnovers. And goaltender Frederik Andersen, he has been injured. He could miss the start of the playoffs. He's had a great season nonetheless for Carolina. 52 games played, .922 save percentage, 2.17 goals against average, and 4 shutouts. Those are numbers that could certainly get him in the Vezina Trophy conversation awarded to the best goaltender in the regular season. The Carolina Hurricanes have qualified for the playoffs for 4 consecutive years. Their last Stanley Cup was in 2006, and that was captained by Rod Brind'Amour, who is their head coach. And the biggest storyline for Carolina is they might be the best team that no one is talking about, at least in the Eastern Conference. Carolina has fundamentally been just a tremendously good team over the past few seasons, so this could really be the culmination of what Rod Brind'Amour and his staff have been sort of cultivating in Carolina. They have players who are in the prime of their career and some really good young talent as well. And so with a healthy Freddie Andersen, this team could be poised for a deep run, who knows, maybe even a Stanley Cup. Now let's look at their opponent, the Boston Bruins. They were 51-25-5 this season with a 40-25 regulation record. As mentioned earlier, they lost all 3 games against the Carolina Hurricanes and were outscored 16-1, but they haven't met since February 10th. Their key statistics, they were 15th in goals for. Goals against, they were the 4th best. 18th on the power play, a little surprising there, but they do have some great weapons. Penalty kill, very strong, 9th. And they had the best win percentage in the NHL in 1-goal games. Here are 3 players to look out for. First of all, winger Brad Marchand, one of the best agitators in the NHL, but he really does back it up with his play on the ice. 70 games played, 32 goals, and 48 assists for 80 points. Center Patrice Bergeron, who is in the last year of his contract, 73 games played, 25 goals, 40 assists for 65 points, 62% in the faceoff circle, one of the best all-around forwards in the NHL and a guy who has a lot of playoff experience. Of course, I could have mentioned as well David Pastrnak, but I wanted to also bring in a defenseman here. So we've got Charlie McAvoy, the top dog there for the Boston Bruins. 78 games played, 10 goals, 46 assists for 56 points, and again, a very good all-around and physical defenseman for Boston. They've now made the playoffs for 6 consecutive years. They last won the Stanley Cup in 2011, but they did go to the 2019 Stanley Cup final with a lot of the players who are on this roster. The biggest storyline for the Bruins, can they conjure something magical with Patrice Bergeron's contract expiring? They're still a very strong team, but with Bergeron leaving, that would certainly leave a void in their chances to make a deep run in the near future. The next team we'll talk about are the New York Rangers, 51-24-6, a fantastic year for them, 43-24 in regulation. Their opponent is the Pittsburgh Penguins, and the Rangers won the last 3 contests. They were 3-1 against Pittsburgh, outscoring them 11-4. On the season, the Rangers were 16th in goals for average, 2nd best in goals against, 4th best on the power play, tied for 8th best on the penalty kill, and tied for the 8th best 1-goal win percentage. 3 key players. First of all, it's got to start with Igor Shesterkin, the goaltender. 53 games played, a .935 save percentage, 2.07 goals against average, and 6 shutouts. Likely wins the Vezina Trophy, and he might be a finalist for the league's MVP. That's the Hart Trophy. Winger Chris Kreider has had an insanely good year as well. 80 games played, 52 goals, 25 assists for 77 points. 26 of those goals came on the power play, so he is absolutely vital for that 4th-ranked power play. And also, Ryan Lindgren is probably their best shutdown defenseman, but I want to spotlight Keandre Miller. He had a great season on paper at least, 58 takeaways to just 36 giveaways. Goaltenders had a save percentage of .932, 5-on-5 when he was on the ice. He also had a +23 rating, so very good season for the young defenseman. The last time the Rangers qualified for the playoffs was 2017. I'm not going to count 2020 because they did not finish in the top 8 for the conference. Their last Stanley Cup came all the way back in 1994. They did go to the 2014 Cup final, and there are some players who are still left on the roster. The biggest storyline for the Rangers is very cut and dry. Can they ride Igor Shesterkin to a Stanley Cup? He certainly has set himself apart from most other goaltenders in the NHL and has put up an MVP caliber season, so it'll be exciting watching Igor between the pipes. And for their opponent, the Pittsburgh Penguins, 45-25-11, including a 36-25 record in regulation. They were 1-3 against the New York Rangers, outscored 11-4. They were 11th in goals for average, 5th in goals against. That's actually pretty surprising, so really good for Pittsburgh. 19th on the power play, 3rd best on the penalty kill, 21st in 1-goal game win percentage. 3 players, it's got to start with Sidney Crosby, 68 games played, 31 goals, 53 assists for 84 points. At the age of 34, this guy just continues to get it done out there, and he plays fantastic in all three zones. Defenseman Chris Letang led all Blue Liners in scoring for Pittsburgh. 77 games played, 9 goals, 58 assists for 67 points, an absolute workhorse at 35 years old, 25 minutes and 48 seconds of time on ice per game. And center Jeff Carter, certainly integral for providing depth scoring. So he's the third line center, 37 years old, but still 75 games played, 19 goals, 25 assists for 44 points. He has 79 points in 126 career playoff games. The playoff streak for Pittsburgh is now at 16 straight seasons. They only missed during Sidney Crosby's rookie year. They've gone every year since then. And their last Stanley Cup was 2017 on a back-to-back because they had won in 2016 as well. The biggest storyline here is that Tristan Jarry was a kind of weak link for the team in the playoffs last year. He's recovering right now from a lower body injury. Casey DeSmith has played really well down the stretch. In his last 13 games, he has allowed 29 goals and he has a .928 save percentage. So really promising numbers from DeSmith there, but the playoffs are a different season. Now we move to the Atlantic Division side of the bracket. We're going to start with the President's Trophy winners, the Florida Panthers. They were 58, 17, and 6 this year, 42 and 17 in regulation. Their opponent is the Washington Capitals. The Panthers won 2 of those 3 matchups. Although one of those wins was in overtime, they outscored Washington, but just by a 13-12 margin, so it was a pretty close regular season series. Florida, by far the best offensive club in the NHL, 4.14 goals per game. They were tied for 11th in goals against, 7th on the power play, 15th on the penalty kill, and the 3rd best 1-goal game win percentage. 3 players to look out for here. First of all, Jonathan Huberdeau, Hooby-Dooby-Doo, 80 games played, 30 goals, 85 assists for a monster 115 points. Certainly will be in the conversation for the league's MVP. Center Alexander Barkov, who won the Selke last year for his 3-zone play, fantastic at every situation in the game. 69 games, 39 goals, 49 assists for 88 points, 57% in the faceoff circle. Just an absolute beast with retaining puck possession out there. And then defenseman Gustav Forsling has been really Florida's best defenseman this year because he's adding some offense and his defense has been spectacular. 71 games played, 31 points, plus 40 rating, 51 takeaways to 53 giveaways, which is actually still pretty good for a defenseman. And goaltenders had a .923 save percentage, 5-on-5 with him out there on the ice. The last time Florida appeared in the playoffs was 2021. Their last Stanley Cup, well, they've never won it. Their last appearance came in 1996. The biggest storyline here, in their 3rd season as a franchise, which was 1996, the Panthers went on an unprecedented, miraculous run. They haven't won a playoff round since then. This is the best team they've ever assembled, and by far probably. So while the fans will accept winning a round, they know that this might be their best chance to win the Stanley Cup. Now let's look at their opponent, the Washington Capitals. So 44, 25, and 12 this year, 35 and 25 in regulation. They were 1-1-1 against the Panthers, outscored 13-12. 10th when it comes to goals for, 13th for goals against, 23rd on the power play, certainly troubling with the weapons that they have. Penalty kill, they were 13th, and 1-goal game win percentage was just 23rd. Key players here, Alex Ovechkin, certainly going to be a topic of conversation. 77 games, 50 goals, 40 assists for 90 points. Defenseman Dmitry Orlov, he really is the backbone of that defense because he plays well in the defensive zone primarily. Certainly John Carlson plays well offensively. But for Orlov, career high 12 goals, career high 35 points, plus 25 rating, 5-on-5 on-ice save percentage of .929. That is fantastic for one of the most underrated defensemen in the NHL for a number of years, I would say. And winger Tom Wilson, kind of like Brad Marchand for Boston earlier, an absolute agitator out there, someone who's not afraid to get physical, even if that means getting dirty. 76 games played, career high 24 goals, 28 assists for 52 points, 238 hits, and only 98 penalty minutes. That's the lowest average per 82 games in his career. The Caps have made the playoffs the last 8 seasons. Their last Stanley Cup was their first Stanley Cup in 2018. But the biggest storyline here, can the Capitals pick up the slack without a 100% Alex Ovechkin? He is nursing an injury right now and has missed the last couple of games. The Capitals have been outscored 9-2 in those past 2 games. He's especially integral to that power play. He has 16 power play goals. And when they don't have all of their horses on that top power play unit, they really look pretty weak. We saw that was the case earlier with TJ Oshie out of the lineup for them as well. Now for the Toronto Maple Leafs on the season, 53-21-7, a record-setting year for them. They were 44-21 in regulation. Their first round opponent is the Tampa Bay Lightning. The Leafs were 2-2 against Tampa with one of those wins in overtime, but they were outscored by a margin of 16-12. Toronto was tied for second in goals for this season. They were 19th in goals against, second best power play, tied for 7th best penalty kill, and tied for the 4th best win percentage in one-goal games. Three key players for Toronto. First of all, center Austin Matthews, 73 games, 60 goals. That is the most by an American-born player. 46 assists for 106 points, over 56% in the faceoff circle, 92 turnovers forced. He's going to win the goal-scoring title, and he could win the Hart Trophy this year. Winger Mitch Marner, 72 games played, 35 goals, 62 assists for 97 points. Both of those guys, though, in the playoffs have been quiet before. Defenseman Morgan Riley is another player that I wanted to point out. 81 games, 10 goals, and 57 assists for 67 points. The Leafs have made the playoffs the past 5 years. Their last Stanley Cup was in 1967. That is the longest in the NHL among teams who have won the Stanley Cup, and the Leafs haven't even been to the Cup final since then. The biggest storyline here is, can they close out a series? They haven't won a playoff round since 2004, and they've choked away series leads, especially when the series goes to a deciding Game 7. For example, they blew a 3-1 series lead against the Canadiens last year, a series they were heavily favored in. This is their best season in history, so the pressure is definitely on. Now for their opponent, the two-time defending champion Tampa Bay Lightning, 50-23-8 on the season, 38-23 in regulation. They outscored Toronto 16-12, winning 2 of the 4 matchups there. They were 2-1-1 against Toronto. 8th best goals for average, 6th best in goals against, 9th on the power play, and I know they're capable of even more there. Tied for 11th on the penalty kill, and the 11th best one-goal game win percentage. Key players, it starts with Andrei Vasilevskiy, their goaltender, 62 games played, .917 save percentage, 2.46 goals against average, and 2 shutouts. He's been a finalist for the Vezina Trophy each of the past 4 years. He won it once, and he won the Conn Smythe last year for the playoffs MVP. Center Steven Stamkos, a fantastic year for him. 80 games played, 39 goals, 64 assists, 103 points, and 10 game-winning goals. The 32-year-old was Tampa's MVP this year, in my opinion. And defenseman Ryan McDonagh. I know we could talk about Victor Hedman, but when it comes to really solidifying things on the backside, it's got to be Ryan McDonagh. He was an integral part in these 2 Stanley Cup runs. 22.5 minutes of time on ice per game, his most in 4 years. Only 24 turnovers committed, and goaltenders have a .935 save percentage, 5-on-5 with him out there. Tampa has made the playoffs now 5 straight seasons, and their biggest storyline, do they have enough gas in the tank from the past several years? The last time that a team won 3 straight Stanley Cups was the Islanders, who won 4 titles from 1980 to 1983. Not even Gretzky's Oilers won 3 straight, even though they won 4 out of 5. Okay, so I just came back from the Spokane Chiefs playoff game. Unfortunately, they lost. But that said, I'm in the mood to do the Western Conference side of the bracket. We're going to start with the Pacific sort of subdivision here. So the first team we'll talk about are the Calgary Flames. On the season, 50-20-11, including 44-20 in regulation. Their opponent for the first round are the Dallas Stars. The Flames were 2-0-1 against Dallas, and they outscored them by a margin of 11-9. The Flames were the 6th best offensive team, 3rd best in terms of goals against average, 10th on the power play, 6th in penalty killing, but their 1-goal game win percentage was only 26th best. I did find that pretty surprising. 3 key players here. So first of all, center Elias Lindholm doesn't quite get as much credit as some of the other top players out there. 81 games played, 42 goals, 40 assists for 82 points, about 53% in the faceoff circle. Winger Johnny Gaudreau could certainly be in the Hart Trophy conversation this year in a contract year. 81 games played, 40 goals, 75 assists for 115 points. And then lastly, goaltender Jacob Markstrom, 63 games played, .922 save percentage, 2.22 goals against average, and 9 shutouts. The last time the Flames were in the playoffs was 2020. The last time they won the Cup was 1989. That was the only time they did so, although they appeared later on in 2004. The biggest storyline here, Coach Daryl Sutter has brought the Flames from irrelevance to Stanley Cup contention. He won 2 cups unexpectedly with the LA Kings in 2012 and 2014. So does this Flames team have that same magic in them? There are a couple players from those Kings Cup teams on Calgary as well. Now let's talk about their opponent, the Dallas Stars. On the season, they were 45-30-6. They were just 30-30 in regulation though. Their opponent is the Calgary Flames. They were 1-2-0 against the Flames, with that win coming in overtime. They were outscored in the series 11-9. Here are the key stats. So 21st in goals for average, 15th in goals against average, 11th on the power play, 19th on the penalty kill, but they had the second best win percentage in 1-goal games. 3 key players here. We'll start out with Jason Robertson. Just an absolute breakout season for this guy. He's going to be a superstar for many years to come. 73 games, 40 goals, 38 assists for 78 points. Defenseman Miro Heiskanen, not exactly known for his offense, but still pretty good in terms of transitioning the puck out of the zone and playing well defensively. 69 games, 5 goals, 30 assists for 35 points. Goaltenders had a .936 save percentage in 5-on-5 situations when Heiskanen was on the ice. And then lastly, my friends, it's got to be the big Pavelski. That is Joe Pavelski. 81 games played, 27 goals, 54 assists for 81 points, 69 block shots, one of the better forwards in the NHL at blocking shots. He has 119 points in 161 career playoff games, so definitely got to throw it down for a guy who's just aging like a fine wine there on the Dallas Stars. They missed the playoffs last year, but they made it in 2020. They actually went all the way to the Stanley Cup final that year, but the only time they won the Stanley Cup was in 1999. The biggest storyline here, can the Stars get secondary and tertiary scoring? They are pretty much a one-line team with Pavelski, Robertson, and Hintz, although the Blue Liners have done a decent job at chipping in. Now let's look at the Edmonton Oilers. On the season, they were 48-27-6, 38-27 in regulation. Their opponent is the Los Angeles Kings. The Oilers were 3-1-0 against LA, with one of those wins in a shootout, but they won the last 3 and overall outscored LA 13-12. On the season, the Oilers were 7th in goals for average. They were 18th in goals against average. 3rd best power play in the NHL, tied for 16th on the penalty kill, and the 7th best winning percentage in 1-goal games. 3 key players. How does it not start with Connor McDavid? 80 games played, 44 goals, 79 assists, 123 points, almost 54% in the faceoff circle, led the league in scoring, certainly is going to be in the Hart Trophy conversation. Center Leon Draisaitl is no slouch either. 80 games played, 55 goals, 55 assists for 110 points, and a little bit over 53% in the faceoff circle. And then lastly, defenseman Darnell Nurse. Now, Evan Bouchard led in points, but Nurse is the better all-around defenseman. So 71 games played, 9 goals, 26 assists for 35 points, plus 18 rating. And goaltenders for Edmonton had a .918 save percentage in 5-on-5 situations with Darnell Nurse on the ice. This is Edmonton's 3rd consecutive playoff appearance. Their last Stanley Cup came in 1990, and their last appearance was in 2006. The biggest storyline here, will the Oilers get enough contributions outside of McDavid and Draisaitl to help their team win at least one series? They have won just one series since that Stanley Cup final run in 2006. Now I'll talk about the LA Kings on the season, 44-27-11, including 35-27 in regulation. Now they were just 1-2-1 against the Edmonton Oilers, and they were outscored 13-12 in that series. For the season, LA ranked 20th in goals for average. They were tied for 9th in goals against average, 27th on the power play, and 22nd on the penalty kill, so certainly not that good at special teams. They had the 13th, or tied for 13th, best winning percentage in 1-goal games. 3 key players for LA. I'll start with number 11, Anze Kopitar. 81 games played, 19 goals, 48 assists for 67 points, about 57% in the faceoff circle, and just a terrific all-around forward. Goaltender Jonathan Quick had a great bounce-back year, 46 games played, .910 save percentage, 2.59 goals against average, and 2 shutouts. And then lastly, defenseman Sean Durzi. He's going to be important in terms of providing some offense from the blue line with Drew Doughty out. So 64 games played, 3 goals, 24 assists for 27 points. The Kings have snapped a 4-year postseason drought with their appearance this year. Their last Stanley Cup came in 2014. The biggest storyline for LA here, can the defense play consistently and produce a little offensively without superstar Drew Doughty, Sean Durzi, who I just mentioned, Matt Roy, and the rest of the D-core really need to step up, especially as they're going up against 2 of the league's top scorers in McDavid and Draisaitl. And then lastly, the Central Division sub-bracket here. So we'll start with the Colorado Avalanche, 56-18-7, including 46-18 in regulation. Their opponent is the Nashville Predators. The Avs were just 1-1-2 against Nashville, and they were outscored 17-16. On the year, the Avalanche had the second best offense, or tied for second best, 8th best in goals against average, 6th best power play, tied for 16th on the penalty kill, and were the 6th best when it came to 1 goal game winning percentage. 3 Avs to look out for in the playoffs. First of all, defenseman Cale Makar, an otherworldly puck mover and goal scorer, 77 games played, 28 goals, 58 assists for 86 points, and nearly 26 minutes of time on ice per game. Just an absolute hoss out there, and he's only going to get better. Center Nazem Kadri, I really do need to call him out for a great year in a contract season. 70 games, 27 goals, 59 assists for 86 points, although he does have a history of cheap shots and suspensions in the playoffs. And then lastly, now I could talk about anybody from the top line, but I want to hone in on Valeri Nichushkin. This guy had a fantastic sort of breakout year, 62 games, 25 goals, 27 assists for 52 points, and he's very skilled defensively as well, really good at forcing turnovers and generating breakaways. This is now the 5th consecutive playoff appearance for Colorado. Their last Stanley Cup came in 2001. Their biggest storyline, they are really the true favorite to win the Stanley Cup this year. They need to make a deep playoff run, no ifs, ands, or buts. Can they at least get past the second round? That is their first big hurdle here. Now for the Nashville Predators. On the season, they were 45, 29, and 7, including 35 and 29 in regulation, although I know they just lost their last game, but it's late at night and I'm lazy. Now in the regular season against the Avalanche, the Preds were 3-1-0. 2 of those wins were in overtime or a shootout. They outscored Colorado 17-16 though. The Preds were 12th in goals for average, 16th in goals against average, 5th best power play, really surprising, a team that used to be in the doldrums in that category, 18th in penalty kill, tied for 8th in 1 goal game winning percentage. 3 players for Nashville. We'll start out with Roman Josi, an outstanding defenseman, 79 games, 23 goals, 72 assists for 95 points. He could win the Norris Trophy, although he's going up against Cale Makar in the playoffs here. It's going to be a fantastic battle between 2 unbelievable defensemen. Center Matt Duchene, real renaissance season for him. 77 games, a miraculous 43 goals, 42 assists for 85 points, over 54% in the faceoff circle. He is a huge reason why they even got into the playoffs. And then lastly, let's talk about defenseman Matthias Ekholm. He doesn't get enough credit out there. Really good two-way defenseman, especially in the defensive zone. 76 games, 31 points, plus 14 rating. And then goaltenders for the Predators had a .924 save percentage when he was on the ice in 5-on-5 situations. Now, the Preds have actually made the playoffs the last 8 years. They've never won the Stanley Cup, although they did get to the final back in 2017. Their biggest storyline is their goaltending. Jussi Saros has had a terrific season, and he could carry the team on a Cinderella run, but his ankle injury could keep him out of the playoffs, at least in the first round, and David Rittich has had a bad season between the pipes. Now for our final 2 teams, so we go to the Minnesota Wild. On the season, 52, 22, and 7, including 36 and 22 in regulation. Their opponent is the St. Louis Blues, who beat the Wild all 3 times, although 2 of those games went into overtime, and the other game was outdoors in like minus 13 degree weather. The Blues outscored the Wild 16-12. The Wild on the season, 5th best in goals for average, 17th in goals against average, 17th on the power play, tied for 25th on the penalty kill, tied for 4th best when it came to 1 goal game winning percentage. Let's talk about 3 players here. First of all, winger Kirill Kaprizov, a fantastic year, could be in that Hart Trophy conversation. 80 games, 46 goals, 60 assists, 106 points. Kevin Fiala in a contract year, unbelievable out there. 81 games, 33 goals, 52 assists for 85 points. He has certainly proved me wrong. He can contribute on a game-in, game-out basis. And defenseman Jared Spurgeon, one of the most underrated players in the NHL, I would have to say, over the past 5 years. 64 games, 39 points to lead the Wild defenseman, plus 30 rating. Goaltenders had a .932 save percentage with him on the ice. The last time the Wild made the playoffs was last year. They have never won the Stanley Cup or appeared in the Stanley Cup. The biggest storyline, kind of like Nashville, is the Wild's goaltending. Cam Talbot has been very good down the stretch, and he played well in the series against the Vegas Golden Knights last year. But if he falters, will Marc-Andre Fleury take up the mantle? Because in his last 4 games, he has given up 15 goals and has a save percentage of just .861. I don't know if he played in that last game, though. And as for the St. Louis Blues, who I am thinking could be the dark horse to win the Stanley Cup, 49, 21, and 11 on the season, 43-21 in regulation. They won all 3 games against the Wild. Of course, 2 were in overtime, 1 was frigid cold. Key stats here: 4th best goals for average, tied for 11th in goals against average, 2nd best power play, 5th best penalty kill, so outstanding special teams. Although their 1-goal game win percentage was the 4th worst in the NHL. 3 players to look out for here. First of all, center Robert Thomas has become a star in this NHL. 71 games played, 20 goals, 57 assists for 77 points. Winger Vlad Tarasenko, a complete renaissance year for this guy, actually a career-setting year. 74 games played, 34 goals, 48 assists for 82 points. And lastly, goaltender Ville Husso. Of course, I could have chosen somebody like Jordan Kyrou, but Husso, 39 games, 921 save percentage, 2.47 goals against average, 2 shutouts, just a great job of taking over that number 1 spot after Jordan Binnington had been faltering. The Blues have now made the playoffs the past 4 seasons. Their last Stanley Cup came in 2019. That was the only time they won the Stanley Cup. And the biggest storyline here: can the younger talents like Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou, in addition to a couple other breakout players like Buchnevich and Ivan Barbashev, can they carry the Blues kind of like the way that their veterans did a couple years ago, guys like David Perron and Ryan O'Reilly, who are still on the team? Well, Twisters, that's my 2022 Stanley Cup playoff preview. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, leave a big thumbs up and comment down below for us. Who are you rooting for in the playoffs, and who do you think actually hoists the cup when this is all said and done? And stick around because we're going to have live streaming and all sorts of playoff content throughout the next couple of months here. So hit the red subscribe button, hit the notification bell, that way you know when I'm going live, and also see the video description down below if you want to follow me on social media. Thank you, Twisters, so much for tuning in. Once again, I'm Nick. I'll catch you later.